Imagine building an empire from scratch, only to be treated like an outsider in your own establishment. This was the reality for Elena, the visionary young founder of a renowned restaurant group who went in disguise to her own flagship location, only to be disdained by a snobbish maître d'. The events that followed were utterly astonishing. And the maître d'? He was about to receive the lesson of a lifetime. Before we dive into today's incredible story, tell us in the comments what city you're watching from. And don't forget to click that subscribe button for more. Elena Vance was in her Chicago headquarters, her gaze fixed on the feedback glowing on her monitor. The message was clear, and its implications felt like an immense weight settling upon her. She had poured her soul into the Aura Dining Group, a collection of eateries across the nation that stood as monuments to culinary innovation and impeccable service. But recently, a series of disturbing reports had surfaced regarding one of her restaurants in particular. It wasn't just any location. It was her crown jewel in New York City. The complaints all told a similar story, that the maître d', a man named Alistair Finch, was making certain patrons feel unwelcome. He was passing judgment and making decisions based on how people were dressed or how old they looked. While none of the feedback explicitly mentioned prejudice, Elena understood the underlying sentiment perfectly. She had faced it her entire career. Having started as a young chef in a world dominated by older men, Elena had constantly battled dismissive attitudes. Now, as the celebrated founder of one of the country's most exclusive dining experiences, she believed those struggles were behind her. Yet it appeared the same elitist culture was poisoning the very company she created to defy it. Elena leaned back, pressing her fingertips to her temples as a deep frustration brewed within her. The stinging memories of being overlooked for promotions, of her ideas being dismissed, of being judged by her appearance instead of her talent, all came flooding back. She refused to allow that toxic mindset to take root in her establishments, especially not in a brand founded on inclusivity and merit. If the reports about Alistair Finch were accurate, he had to be confronted. But Elena needed undeniable proof. She reached for her phone and dialed her assistant. "Leo, cancel all my appointments for tomorrow," she instructed, her voice quiet but resolute. "I'm heading to New York." The following evening, Elena stood across the street from Celeste by Aura in Manhattan. The city lights danced around her as the familiar sounds of urban energy filled the air. Her reflection in the polished glass of a nearby building showed a stranger. Her typical sharp, minimalist attire was replaced with faded jeans, a vintage concert t-shirt, and a well-worn leather jacket, with her distinctive tattoos on full display for a change. She was just another face in the crowd tonight, with no outward sign of her success or position. She knew intimately what it felt like to be underestimated, to be viewed as someone who didn't belong. Tonight, she would enter her own restaurant to experience that feeling all over again. As Elena stepped inside, the warm, sophisticated ambiance of the restaurant enveloped her. Polished mahogany floors shone under bespoke chandeliers, and the air carried a delicate aroma of truffle and fresh herbs. Every detail, from the fine art on the walls to the crisp linen on the tables, was designed to convey a sense of refined elegance. Yet despite the beauty, she immediately sensed an undercurrent of tension. Elena took her time, her gaze sweeping across the dining room. A few patrons were scattered about, enjoying their meals. An older couple, clearly wealthy, was being fawned over by a waiter who catered to their every whim with a broad, deferential smile. But as Elena approached the host stand, she felt the shift. No one made eye contact with her, not the servers gliding past, nor the busboys clearing tables. She stood for a moment, waiting to be acknowledged, feeling the familiar chill of being invisible. Then she saw him, Alistair Finch, positioned near the entrance, like a sentinel, his posture rigid in a perfectly tailored suit. Alistair's eyes fell upon Elena, and his welcoming facade instantly dissolved into a mask of faint disapproval. This is it, Elena thought, bracing herself for the inevitable confrontation. Alistair approached her, his steps measured and soundless on the plush carpet. When he stopped before her, there was no warm welcome, no polite inquiry. Only a critical, sweeping glance over her casual attire. "May I help you?" Alistair inquired, his tone laced with a cool civility that felt more like a dismissal. Elena looked up, meeting his condescending gaze without flinching. "A table for one, please," she said calmly. Alistair's lips thinned into a barely perceptible sneer. "I'm afraid we are fully committed this evening," he stated, his voice dripping with insincere regret. "Perhaps you would find something more suitable for your needs at one of the bistros further down the avenue," he suggested, gesturing vaguely toward the door. Elena's jaw tightened. There it was, the baseless assumption, delivered with polished arrogance. In his mind, Elena was nothing more than a lost tourist who had wandered into a world where she didn't belong. "I think I'll wait," Elena replied, her voice firm. Alistair crossed his arms, his eyes lingering on her ripped jeans with obvious distaste. "Are you quite sure?" he pushed. "This is not the sort of establishment where one simply waits for a table to become available." Elena carefully maintained her composed expression. She had all the proof she needed. "You can let me know if something opens up," she said, before turning and walking away from him. As she exited, she could feel Alistair's judgmental stare on her back, the familiar weight of prejudice following her out into the New York night. The next evening, Elena returned to Celeste, but this time was entirely different. She wore a bespoke silk pantsuit, and her heels clicked authoritatively on the sidewalk as she approached the grand entrance. Inside, the staff was abuzz with activity. Alistair was at the center of it, his voice sharp as he orchestrated the evening service, preparing for a flawless night. They were completely unaware of the storm that was about to break. When Elena walked through the doors, the entire energy of the room changed in an instant. The staff who had ignored her the night before were now a picture of rapt attention, their eyes widening in shock and recognition. Even Alistair's confident posture wavered when he saw the woman he had so easily dismissed, now exuding an unmistakable aura of command. "Miss Vance," Alistair stammered, his voice filled with a sudden panicked warmth. "What an honor! I had no idea you were in town." Elena offered a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm here to observe the guest experience," she said, her tone deceptively light. "I had a rather enlightening visit just last night." Alistair's face went visibly pale, but he composed himself with practiced speed. "I'm very sorry to hear that, Miss Vance. If there was any problem, I assure you it will be rectified immediately." Elena didn't answer right away, instead taking a deliberate look around the room, watching the staff stand rigidly. desperate to impress now that they knew her identity. It was all a charade, and she could tell that Alistair had no real comprehension of the damage he had done. "Let me be direct with you, Alistair," Elena started, her gaze locking onto the maître d'. "What I witnessed last night wasn't a small problem. It was a symptom of a deep-seated arrogance." Alistair's forced smile vanished, but he stayed quiet, waiting for her to finish. "You see, Alistair," Elena continued, her voice low and sharp, "you made an assumption that because I wasn't dressed to your standards, I couldn't possibly be a patron here." Alistair opened his mouth to object, but Elena held up a hand to silence him. "I've been in your shoes. I know what it's like to have doors closed in your face because of how you look. But I did not build this company for people like you to enforce those same toxic prejudices at my door." The silence in the restaurant was absolute. The other employees were frozen, their eyes wide as they watched the scene unfold. "So this is what is going to happen," Elena went on, her expression hardening. "You are not fired, not yet. For the next month, you will personally welcome every single guest that comes through that door, regardless of their appearance, and you will treat them with the dignity they deserve." Alistair swallowed hard, his face burning with humiliation. "If you fail at that simple task, your employment here will be terminated," Elena stated, her voice unwavering. "And believe me, if you make a single person feel unwelcome again, I will ensure you never work in hospitality in this city again." The weeks that followed were a trial for Alistair, and Elena had the restaurant's operations team monitor him closely. The rest of the staff began to change as well, their own attitudes softening as they watched their manager forced to treat every guest as a VIP. The story of Alistair's public humbling spread throughout the company, and slowly the elitist culture that had taken hold at Celeste began to dissolve. Elena wasn't content with fixing the issue in just one location. She knew the problem stemmed from an outdated industry-wide attitude, so she launched a new company-wide hospitality initiative. Every manager and every employee was required to participate in workshops focused on radical inclusivity and empathy. Elena made it abundantly clear that there was zero tolerance for snobbery or prejudice in any form. As time went on, the change in the restaurant became undeniable. Patrons who had previously been made to feel inadequate started to return, and the staff who had once enabled Alistair's behavior began to take genuine pride in creating a welcoming atmosphere for everyone. Elena knew her work was far from finished, but the progress was tangible. When she finally revisited the restaurant weeks later, once again in her most casual attire, the difference was night and day. The same staff who had ignored her before now greeted her with authentic warmth, offering assistance without a hint of judgment. Even Alistair, humbled and transformed by the experience, had clearly learned his lesson. As Elena moved through the dining room, she couldn't help but feel a profound sense of accomplishment. The war against elitism was far from won, but she had drawn a line in the sand within her own company, and that was a powerful start. Hospitality, she thought to herself as she left, wasn't just about service. It was about dignity, and now Aura Dining embodied that core belief.